Hi, this is State Representative Antonio Parkinson bringing you our weekly update as we normally do. And I'm excited to see you and excited to keep you up to speed on what's going on here at the state. A couple of things that have transpired this week. One of which, actually, what's our date? Let me make sure I got the right date here. We are the week of, looks like April 19th, April 20th, 19th to 20th. Okay, so the week of April 19th to 20th. And as we do every week, like I said, just want to get you up to date on everything that's going on. I'm trying to make this one as fast as I possibly can because we're hearing the budget appropriations that we set forth in order to, assist people in our community. So we're gonna go in there and fight for, the needed revenue, the needed dollars that, will help to enhance what we do in our specific communities, like the Raleigh area, Fraser area, North Memphis area, Berkeley area, and some of the Bartlett area. So here we go. This week, what did we do this week? Oh, a couple of pieces of interesting pieces of legislation that was on the House floor, and they did pass. One was it made it so that if a woman has conceived, I mean, and it could be, just recently conceived the day before, and she has something that states that she is pregnant, and God forbid something happens to her, she's the victim of a homicide, car accident, or something like that. Well, that individual that perpetrated the crime can now be charged on 2 counts of murder, so, or 2 counts of homicide, or whatever the case may be. So there was some interesting debate on both sides of that as to whether or not there should be a charge on it. But needless to say, it passed on the House floor, and so that I'm not sure where it is in the Senate, and but once it passes in the Senate, it'll go to the governor's office to be signed into law. One of the other things, this was I thought was some good legislation. The governor, he had legislation that would make it so that repeat offenders of domestic violence, their sentences will be tougher now. So if you are an individual that is a perpetrator of domestic violence, and you do it for the second time, then your sentence is going to be much tougher than what it was prior to that. And that was the governor's bill, and I signed on to that bill, and definitely voted for that piece of legislation. We want to protect our women and children in our state from domestic violence. So that's happening. Let me see what else here. Oh, okay. Parental involvement. We're in a time of what we call education reform in the state of Tennessee. And so one of our ideas is to get parents more involved in children's education. And if you're a parent and you're already involved in children's education, kudos to you. We want to get everyone else, because we want to create a wraparound effect of support for our children in regards to their education. And one of the bills that we sponsored, myself and Senator Kelsey, was signed into law on the 17th of this month. So earlier this week, this legislation was signed into law by the governor, actually on April 17th to be specific. And this was the legislation that instructs the Department of Education to come up with a contract for both parents and students to sign when they enter when they're in school. And what that contract will do is it'll specify what is expected, from them in regards to their involvement in their children's education, as far as students are concerned, in regards to conduct, and what's expected of them in school. And we think it's a good starting place. And what will happen is this is how it works. The Department of Education will come up with the contract, and what is to say. They will encourage the local education agencies, meaning the school boards, to adopt this contract and to get the schools on board with the contract and getting it out to the parents. So we think it's a good starting place to start this whole idea of parental involvement, and getting the parents more engaged in their children's education. The other piece of legislation that's coming down the pike on parental involvement will be on the House floor on this Monday coming up. So which that is Monday, April 23rd. I think, yeah, Monday, April. What's today's date? Yeah, Monday, April 23rd. And if you want to watch the process, go to www.tn.gov, or let me rephrase that, www.capitol.tn.gov, and click on live on video, and you can watch what's happening live on the floor. So this legislation, the parental report card legislation, will be on the House floor on Monday. And let me tell you a little bit about the parental report card legislation and how that works. Here's the basics of it. Myself, along with Senator Kelsey, we sponsored this legislation, and what it does is it's only specific to the Achievement School District and the schools that the Achievement School District operates. Okay, so right now those schools are only Frazier Elementary and Corning Elementary in the Memphis area. And what it does, it also focuses only rather on the grades pre-K to third grade. Okay, pre-K to third grade. And I want you to think about that. Pre-K to third grade, that's the foundation years. That's where these kids learn their very basics of what's going to carry them through for the rest of the applications throughout their years in school. Okay, so we really want to gird them up and create that foundation around these kids from the grades of pre-K when they enter into school into the third grade. And then hopefully this idea of parental involvement will serve as a primer for those parents, kind of like priming the pump. You know, you get the water coming out, then it just free flows, and we want them to carry on these same habits, these same ideas and involvement throughout the rest of this child's years in school. Now, what it does is this: the Achievement School District will publish what they expect from parents in regards to parental involvement in their, with their children. Okay, and keep in mind the foundation years. I know I keep coming back to this, but I want you to understand this: the foundation years, pre-K to 3, these kids are dependent on the support systems that's in place for their education. So it's not like they're in the 10th and 11th and 12th grade where you drop them off at the school and they can kind of decide what they want to do for themselves. These are our smallest children. So we want to make sure that we put in place the support that they need, because they can't do it on their own. Now, the Achievement School District will present to the parents what's expected of them. And here's the basics. We just want to make sure the children are at school on time. We want to make sure that the children are prepared for school. We want to ensure that the children have done their homework. And then let's say the homework is not all correct. Okay, but we want to make sure that they put an effort in to do their homework. So we want to make sure that's done. And then the last one is communicating with the teacher. Now, let's talk about that briefly. Communicating with the teacher. I don't care if it's text messages, if it's email, phone calls, going up there, having a physical meeting with the teacher. I don't care if you send smoke signals. Just make sure that you communicate with the teacher in regard to what's happening with your child, and not only when it's bad news, but when it's good news, when it's news that's neither good nor bad, and just being up to date. We need you to communicate with the teacher, and this is really the core of what this legislation is set for and what it does, because we need more communication between the teacher and the parent in regards to their children's education. Keep in mind, again, the foundation years. If they don't get it here, is a good possibility that they'll either fall behind in school or possibly drop out. And now there's only 2 places that society puts individuals that are uneducated. They either try to put them in jail or they end up in the grave, and we don't want none of that for our children that we're trying to ensure that they have at least at a minimum the basic education that they need. Now, keep in mind also, here's a couple other things that you need to remember about this parental report card. When the child receives a report card, the parent will receive a blank report card. Let me say it again, because I don't want y'all to get this twisted. When the child receives a report card, the parent will receive a blank report card that will ask them to grade themselves or judge themselves in those 4 areas that we just talked about. How good were you in getting the child to school on time? How good were you in making sure that the child was prepared for school? How good were you in ensuring that the child's homework was done? And how good were you in regards to communicating with the teachers? And we want them to judge themselves accurately, judge themselves truthfully. And what we feel that this will do when the parents fill out that report card, it'll tell that parent, well, wait a minute, I may be able to shore up some areas, or work on this area a little bit more, or I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. And we're asking the school board, or the schools rather, put incentives in there to encourage the parents to really work on these things and do as well as they can in doing. What if we can create a parental honor roll, something like that, you know, but something that would encourage the parents to be involved in their children's education. And once they grade themselves, and you know, if there are areas that need, they might be a little challenged in, then we want the schools to be able to either direct them to the resources that may be able to help them to kind of, you know, shore that area up, because we want to do everything that we can to ensure that the children get the best education they can possibly get. And here's the last thing I want to say about this. Keep in mind, accountability is needed on in every aspect of our children's education. So let's look at this thing as a three-legged stool. Okay, you have the teachers that are held accountable through the new teacher tenure law, and I'll come back to that. Then you have the schools and the school boards that are held accountable through the funding from the state, and then you have the parents that should be held accountable in regards to their children's education, which is the most important part of it. The parents are the most important part to this, to the education of our children. Now, think about this though. If you are a teacher, now your the tenure laws say that your tenure is going to be judged, or your evaluations rather is going to be judged on the growth of that child while in your care. Okay, so if the child comes in, let's say your child is a third grade child, comes in with on the first grade reading level. Okay, so if that child goes from first grade to third grade reading level while in your care, then that's going to look really good on your evaluation, and it makes up a big part of your evaluation, which leads to you as a teacher receiving tenure. Okay, now what if we have a parent that brings the child to school half the time, or doesn't show up, or the child's homework is never done, or the child is sleepy every day because he's been up watching Nick at Night all night, or you know, one of those deals? Well, it's going to be kind of hard for that teacher to show the growth of this child while under her care, because they're not getting the support from the parent side. And it works in reverse also. We need the teachers to be accountable also to these parents as well. And it all of these things work in a cycle with each other and are interlocked. So we want everyone to, you know, everyone to do their part to make sure that our children receive the education that they so deserve, and they deserve the best. And lastly, you know, those kids that are not that do not get that foundation, you know, these prisons, their formula is to start figuring out how many beds we need to build for the next set of prisons that we build, based on how these children are coming out of the third grade and fourth grade. And we need to make sure that we shore that up. That's very important. A couple other things I want to touch on. Oh yeah, Pastor Sammy Holloway, pastor of Breath of Life Christian Center, they were here on the Hill on last Monday, or this Monday rather, and it was a good time for them. Pastor Holloway was actually the chaplain for the day, and said the prayer over our legislators and over our legislative house before we opened up our session. He also received a resolution for 30 years in ministry, which was wonderful and well deserved, very well deserved. And he brought his whole family, and some other church members came, and it was a good time. The children were able to serve as honorary pages on the house floor, and they really enjoyed that. So and there are pictures from this event on my state representative Antonio Parkinson Facebook page. So if you want to go to that, you can go to www.facebook.com/TNRepParkinson, and you can see the pictures from Pastor Holloway and the Holloways on the Hill. And it was a good time, and I appreciate them for coming all the way up here to, you know, serve our state in that capacity. A couple of other things real quick. Budget appropriations. As I said, I'll be discussing budget appropriations, the ones we discussed in the previous legislative update, here shortly before the budget committee. So we want to make sure that we fight for the funding and the resources that we need in our part of our community. Also, don't forget, the Block Party for Peace is going to be at Kmart this year at 3201 Austin P. And if you need more information on that, you can go to www.blockpartyforpeace.com. And from what I understand, there's still room for vendors and sponsors. If you know of any businesses that want that exposure to the thousands of people that are coming out to the Block Party for Peace, and it's going to be a good time. We've got a good lineup for the block party this year. There's a lot of good things happening. So, and this is you know, our community, our district. This is their signature event, so it'll be a good time. Lastly, this evening, the Network to Network Business Mixer will be happening from 5:30 to 7:30 at El Patio Mexican Grill on Austin P, which is 3954 Austin P Highway, right in front of Walmart, formerly Applebee's. Real nice restaurant. If you hadn't had a chance to get out there and see it, you need to come out here this evening and see it. And our special guest is Ted Townsend, who is the Economic and Community